Rugby Championship 2024, folks. Team of the tournament, a little bit delayed. It is school holidays here in NZ, so my kids have been home. But I wanted to go through the stats. That's kind of the key thing that slows me down whenever I'm looking at these teams of the tournament. I kind of went through a list of 15 guys plus a bench and compared some of their stats. Some of the guys I did change after looking at the numbers. We'll go through them. We'll go through some of the stats as well, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on who you would have. Some of the guys, like my first fella, Openside, I didn't really need to look at the stats because I would be surprised even if he brought up all the numbers. Like, props aren't really correctly represented by the stats anyway, because like when you're looking at prop stats, like what are you really looking at? What stat shows scrummaging power? That's the main thing you're after with your prop. But, I mean, Ox was, I think, clearly the best loose head. I would be very surprised if anybody had anybody other than Ox as their loose head of the tournament. Dominated at scrum time. Was really busy around the park. Actually finished with 6 defenders beaten. He even managed himself a clean break. 33 carries across the tournament. But, yeah, just demolition jobs at scrum time. Number one reason you pick your prop. And, yeah, he's having probably his career year. I don't know. He seems to be, like, elevated to that position where, like, who's going to be competing with that guy? I don't know. Openside, really phenomenal year from him. Another guy who I thought had a pretty outstanding time for the ABs was Tyrell Lomax. I still feel like we played him a little bit too long in some of the games. And, you know, when he gets 70 minutes in or whatever it was, maybe 60 plus, starts to tire. He certainly gave away one sloppy yellow card, which was pretty costly for the ABs, you know, when left on pretty late in the piece against South Africa, because, I mean, he played 370 minutes across the tournament, 6 games, so he was really quite present for the ABs, but he was good at scrum time. He was busy around the park. He had a bunch of carries. He beat some defenders as well, pretty solid defensively. 54 out of 59 tackles is a pretty good effort, and, you know, won a few turnovers on defense as well. So from a New Zealand perspective, it's pleasing to have guys to highlight who aren't just necessarily flashy backs. Hooker was tough because I was mainly looking at 2 guys, and you guys can have a look at the numbers and tell me who you go with. Because you got one guy who ends up with a whole bunch more tries, and one guy who ends up with a whole bunch more carries. So 52 carries compared to 28, 235 meters compared to 60. That's a whole lot more work around the park from one fella, but the other guy gets 4 tries, and the other guy has kind of a better return on defenders beaten compared to the amount of minutes played, like 5 defenders beaten compared to 8, when the first guys played 382 minutes to 254. So both these guys are pretty outstanding. I ended up going with the Kiwi in Cody Taylor, and if you didn't work it out, he's the guy who had a bunch more carries around the park, like a stupid amount more than anybody else for that position. Just, like, it's not necessarily why you pick your hooker, but the fact that he can do that kind of thing, I feel like speaks pretty good volumes. And he even finishes with one more turnover than Marks, which is unusual because Michael Marks is usually turnover king. But admittedly, Taylor did play a lot more minutes. I feel like you can go with either of these guys and still be pretty happy with how things have been selected. If I'm choosing a bench former front row, I'm probably going to chuck an Aussie in there in Angus Bell because I really feel like he makes the Aussies look better up front at loose head cover. Tight head cover, I would go for Brig Franz, which is an unusual position for him because he's generally a starting tight head. And then hooker, if I'm picking Taylor, I'm certainly going Malcolm Marks. So that's your kind of front row. Second row, I'm going to go with Rua Nokia for the box. Obviously, a lot more pressure on him with the the absence of so many other South African locks, but 32 lineouts won across the tournament. The top guy in that department, South Africa's lineout, was by no means perfect. I mean, I was mainly talking about 2 hookers from New Zealand and South Africa. Neither of these countries had perfect lineouts by any means, but Nokia really busy at lineout time. Busy around the park as well. Played a lot of minutes for the box and pretty happy to get his hands on the ball as well. Finishes the competition with 30 passes across the tournament. Wins a few turnovers. Makes 50 plus tackles. So yeah, I still feel like he's going to lose his spot in the pecking order when other guys come back, if they come back. But yeah, pretty pleasing from him. He's a real kind of workhorse. And then tight head lock, I ended up going with Tupavai. I really feel like he stood out in the New Zealand pack. Like, he made more tackles than any other lock in this competition with 72. His defensive work at line-out time, in terms of his ability to pinch line-out, I think was probably better than anybody else this tournament. He played 437 minutes, so very, very present for the ABs. Bust tackles, he manages 6 of them across the tournament. Also keen to get his hands on the ball, finishes with 30 passes himself, finishes with a try assist. 14 lineouts won, so happy to kind of jump up and secure their own ball as well. Yeah, Tupavai, I thought stepped up really well. If I was going for a bench lock, I think you got to go Big Eben. If you were to put Big Eben in alongside Rodnokia, that would be the all Springbok lock and duo. So I think you'd be pretty happy with either one. Lucy's, I think you'd be pretty mad, and he was certainly my first name off the team sheet, to go with Pieter-Steph du Toit. You could even kind of squeeze him into the second row if you wanted to, because he did start 2 games in the second row. But I put him in the position where he played most of his minutes. Pieter-Steph in the back row. He was just genuinely quite incredible. Is he the favourite for World Player of the Year this year? Probably, seeing as they never pick props for World Player of the Year. Ox would be in that conversation. But Pieter-Steph, just constantly player of the match, finishes the competition with 3 tries, including that fingertip one in the final game. Beats 7 defenders, has 186 meters, which is pretty phenomenal. Gets clean breaks, wins lineouts, wins turnovers, makes 56 tackles, 29 passes. Like, also really happy to keep his hands on the ball. Yeah. Satiti was also bloody good at number 6 for the ABs. And his numbers, despite having a lot fewer minutes than Pieter-Steph, are also really, really impressive. He also has like 30 passes. He also has 3 clean breaks. He also makes turnovers. He also beats 9 defenders, which is more than Pieter-Steph. You know what I mean? So, yeah, had a pretty good tournament for the ABs, but Pieter-Steph at 6, 7 in South Africa. But for me, it's a 6, blindside. He's the guy. Now, 7, I ended up going with my stats pick, because I didn't have this guy down initially, but I ran the numbers on a few different open sides, and I ended up going with Khaleesi. I love Fraser McCright for the Wallabies. He played 2 games. I think if he plays the tournament, he maybe sneaks in at 7, like if he plays 3, 4 games. But 2 games, it's kind of hard to pick. The guy I initially had was Matera. And if we have a look at their numbers, Matera and Khaleesi, like Matera's played a lot more minutes than Khaleesi. So I feel like if Khaleesi plays more minutes, in some areas he probably gets higher numbers than Matera, or at least comparable numbers. And in other areas he already has higher numbers than Matera, despite the fact that he played a lot fewer minutes, like 232 minutes to 378. Like, not quite double, but Matera's played a lot more minutes than Khaleesi. Khaleesi still finished with more defenders beaten, 4-3. He's finished with the same number of turnovers with 2. He's finished only 7 passes behind, 20-27. And his tackling completion rate, Khaleesi, 23 from 25. And remember, the Box guys have always got lower tackle counts because they play with more ball. Generally, very, very accurate on the tackle. Like, this is one where Matera's numbers are probably pretty similar, but the fact that he's played more minutes means he's missed more tackles. He's missed 6 with 51 for 57. But he's got a lot more run meters, 143. They both scored 2 tries. You can kind of take your pick. Matera's certainly a little bit more flashy. He gets a red card, which maybe doesn't help his chances if you're looking at the kind of overall team of the tournament. He's the only guy to get a red card in the entire Rugby Championship. So, yeah, Khaleesi's numbers were surprisingly good. So accurate on the tackle, accurate at the breakdown, scores tries, bust tackles. Like, yeah, really, really pleasing from him. And they tend to win games when that guy starts. What can I say? So, yeah, Khaleesi ends up making my pick at 7. But as I said, I think if McCright had played 2 more games, I probably would have gone for him. Number 8. And this one was a little bit surprising because there was a guy I didn't think I was going to really go for that I almost picked. And that was Ari Savia. I ended up with going Joaquin Oviedo for the Pumas. Like, I almost put in Savia. which is surprising because I thought Savia was kind of quiet. Like, if you're looking for the guy who made the most carries of the tournament, it's Savia. Like, and he had a couple of tries. He had more defenders beaten than Oviedo. He had more run meters than Oviedo. But I think the problem with Savia this year is he's been largely having to kind of work harder to get that same result. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of his busted tackles and post-contact meters and whatnot have been kind of limited. Like, he has 89 carries for 208 meters, which is pretty low for Adi Savia, whereas Oviedo, he makes 140 meters, and he played a heap of less game time and a heap less carries than Savia. So Oviedo, in terms of his ability to just get on the front foot, was kind of Savia style from maybe even just last year. Like 258 minutes to Savia's 480, and yet he's only 60 meters behind. He's got one more clean break than Savia. He's got 7 defenders beaten behind Savia, but he gets tries, 2 of them. He makes 42 out of 46 tackles. The only one area he doesn't really get is the old turnovers one. Like, Savia got a couple of them. But, Oviedo, in terms of his X-Factor punch forward, was very, very solid. I mean, I looked at Visa's numbers as well. I had a look at Harry Wilson's numbers as well. But for mine, it was either Oviedo or Savia. But I do think Savia, like I mentioned, had to work too hard to build up those offensive numbers, where Oviedo, if he'd played more minutes, if he'd played the same amount of minutes as Savia, I think apart from turnovers one, he'd be across the board, leading pretty much every key category. If I was going to pick a replacement loose forward on the bench, it'd be Satiti. Satiti really even gave Peter Steph a run for his money in terms of his involvements for much fewer minutes. Number 9 is such a hard one because they all rotated a lot. I ended up with going with Cortez Ratima for the ABs. Like, he only gets 2 starts, but he plays all the games, either bench or starting. 192 minutes, so not that, like, pretty similar minutes, I think, like Reinach. Pretty similar, but like the box chopped and changed number 9 a lot. And I genuinely think Ratima keeps the ball moving quickly at a pace which suits the ABs. 188 passes, gets a try assist, beats 8 defenders, which is certainly the kind of most effective of the number 9s in terms of their ability to beat one-on-one tacklers. He doesn't have the most run meters or anything in those terms, but he's good defensively, 21 out of 22 tackles, wins a couple of turnovers. So, yeah, I think he is certainly one for the future. And when Roy Guard comes back, our number 9 situation looks pretty tasty. And number 10 was also a kind of hard one to decide, because I felt like there were 2 leading candidates in Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu, who's obviously missed the end of the tournament with injury, and Thomas Albonos. One guy's got more run meters. One guy's made more tackles. One guy's busted more tackles. One guy's got a kind of higher rate of kicking. One guy's got better kicking from the tee. So it's kind of a mixed bag as to which guy you go for. But I ended up with going with Thomas Albonos. I genuinely think he made a pretty decent effort in making what has been possibly the most successful campaign in Puma's history. I know they finished 3rd, but they beat all the teams. They're the only team to beat the box, which says something about his ability to run that back line. He started this tournament as certainly not the first choice 10, but played really well, man. 312 minutes. He's got 270 run meters, 16 defenders beaten, 3 clean breaks, like a really attacking-minded 10, but not just like the Santiago Carreras, like I'm a winger. I know he's played, Santiago has played a lot of positions in his rugby career, but like Albonos is an out-and-out 10. So he's in a 10 who likes to attack, but he also is able to set guys up as well. Like, he passed a heap. He passed 75 times. Like, Sasha was at 28. I know he played about an hour's more rugby, but chucking the ball around a lot. He had a lower rate of kind of kicking from hand, but he had a better percentage off the tee with 79, won a couple of turnovers, scored a couple of tries, including the only try in that last game defeat. Yeah, Albonos, I thought, looked the business. So really, really kind of pleasing one from him. Midfield was another one that's tough. You guys look at the numbers and tell me who you go with. Like, the 2 guys I'm looking at are Deolendi and Chocobates. One of them played a heap more minutes and made a heap more tackles. 67 from 74. Wins 1 turnover. That's Chocobates. De Allende makes fewer tackles, remembering he played fewer minutes in the box, generally have to make fewer tackles. 281 minutes, 26 out of 32, but 4 turnovers won is nuts. And then you look at De Allende's punch on attack, and it's just next level. Like 9 defenders beaten is more than Chocobates, playing way fewer minutes. 133 meters. He's really getting the ball up the guts. 3 clean breaks. I don't know, man. Like, either way, I think you pick these guys, Chocobates or David De Allende. I think you're picking 2 really good players. But De Allende's ability to get over the ball and his ability to punch through on the tackle led me to go with him. 13 for mine was also a pretty easy choice, I think, in Creel. And it's interesting because there's a few areas where other guys outdo Creel. Like, Creel leads the entire competition for clean breaks with 8. Remembering he played a lot of minutes. He played 478 minutes this Rugby Championship, but 8 clean breaks, more than anybody else. Like, he had 11 defenders beaten. Ikitau had more for the Aussies. He has like 35 tackles. Sinti had more for the Pumas. He has 19 passes. Believe it or not, Rico Ioane had more passes. But overall game, scoring 2 tries, getting 261 meters, the passes that he makes when he shifts out to the wing, whatever it be, I feel like Creel was just a cut above. Like, I don't know what the picking order I did this was. I know Peter Steff was 1. I know Ox was probably 2. And then I think it was like Creel 3. Pretty much. It didn't really cause me much brain power to go with Creel. Maybe you guys agree or disagree, but I thought Creel was exceptional this Rugby Championship. Left wing was one I wanted to check the stats. Again, apologies for all my stat checking. Hopefully you enjoy him as much as I do. But Caleb Clark is the guy I ended up going with. And the guy I snubbed for Clark was Carreras, Mateo Carreras. Mateo played a lot more minutes, 466 to Clark's 271. Remember, Clark spent a little bit of time on the sidelines injured. Clark gets 6 tries, and that's probably one of the primary categories you got to look at for a winger. And sometimes it's his power that gets him those tries. Like 13 defenders beaten is not too far behind Carreras, despite a lot less game time. 6 clean breaks is actually more despite less game time. Only 14 meters behind Mateo Carreras, despite a lot less game time. The main area where you would say Carreras really outshines Clark is defensively. Like 40 out of 49 tackles for a winger is exceptional for Mateo Carreras, whereas Clark's a pretty unimpressive 10 from 16. Not that often you take a winger based on his defensive capabilities, though. So kind of primary attribute, Clark in terms of his run meters, defenders beaten, try scoring. That's why you pick him, and he competes well in the air. He did get himself carded a couple of times, which was unfortunate. But Mateo Carreras, defensively, like 3 turnovers, 1 of 40-plus tackles. Hell of a competitor this year as well, and certainly the best kind of strike weapon in the Pumas back line, I think, in terms of the back 3 anyway. Right wing, I ended up going with Colby. And he was another one that was kind of one of the first names off the team sheet, to be fair. It was, I was trying to compare him to like Will Jordan, but Will Jordan also spent a lot of the game time at fullback, so it was kind of a hard one to compare. Cheslin Colby has more defenders beaten than anybody else in the entire competition, so he is out and out first place for that. He doesn't get that many tries, only 1 and 1 assist throughout the entire comp, but 400 minutes, most defenders beaten, 6 clean breaks. You know, he passes the ball 240 meters, so just the ankle breaking steps, the reliability of that guy. Mr. Consistent on the right wing for the box. Will Jordan ended up with more run meters, but you do end up, and more tries, but you do end up getting a few kind of free ones at fullback. And then fullback was also a tough one, because you look at Malia was great, Fussy was great, Will Jordan was great, even Tom Wright was pretty impressive for the Wallabies, to be fair, but I think over the course of the comp, I think Malia was a little bit more consistent than everybody else. He's not necessarily the number 1 guy in any of his kind of key categories, but he scores 3 tries. He is the number 1 guy for offloads, actually, for the entire competition, so certainly able to get everyone else involved. He finishes, playing the majority of the minutes, 444 across the comp. He's got a bunch of run meters. He beats 14 defenders, which is actually not that far behind. It's ahead of Caleb Clark kind of thing, despite the fact he's played a lot more minutes. And his kicking game as well, really consistent most of the time, able to chew off quite a few meters for the Pumas when they are in a bit of trouble. But you kind of spoiled for choice at fullback, as I mentioned, with Will Jordan Fussy and Tom Wright and others as well. So, yeah, that is the starting 15. I would also chuck in Hendrickson on the bench as the 9, because I think he looks potentially to have the highest kind of future ceiling of the all-round 9s for the comp. Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu is a good guy to have on the bench because he can cover multiple positions and also played really well as a good argument for 10. And then Will Jordan, as your kind of outside back replacement, is still proper X factor. His defensive numbers are not fantastic, but his offensive numbers, and again, that's the main reason you pick him, are absolutely through the roof. So, yeah, team of the tournament, a whole bunch of stats kind of overload. If you guys appreciated all the numbers, I would appreciate you liking the video, subscribing to the channel. It's all kind of welcome stuff. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. Who would you have in a team of the tournament? There's a bunch of them about, all kind of slightly different, but I feel like some of the picks, especially Peter Steph, especially Ox, probably Creel, I would imagine, are largely pretty consistent. I did change my mind, as I said, with a couple of the guys based on the stats. Some guys maybe do a bit of work that gets kind of underrepresented until you look at the numbers. But hey, that's just the name of the game. Cheers as always for coming along, folks, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.